What's happening, everyone? It's time for another 5-minute bit of wisdom. Today I want to talk about a big one, the question of, does God exist? If you like this content, you can go to YouTube, search Darren Keim, go there, and then you can like, subscribe, or share. Does God exist? The big question. All right, so I'm not going to be able to answer this in one 5-minute session. I'm going to go ahead and say that right now. But I'm going to talk about the reason why I think it's important that this question is considered. I would compare this to back in the day when I believe it was Galileo who first suggested that it was that the sun actually is the one that is in the middle and the earth is revolving around the sun, not the earth is in the middle and the sun is revolving around the earth. That's what science used to think. Science used to, the people in the know, they used to believe that the earth was the stationary object and that the sun rotated around it. Then they discovered, lo and behold, wow, there's a lot of planets and they're all revolving around the sun. So imagine that you're looking up at the sky and you see what we still see now, but when you were looking at it before this realization, you thought that when you'd see the sun rise in the sky, starting from the east going to the west, you believed that it was the sun revolving around the earth. Then let's say that you were taught that what was really happening, that the earth is the thing that's actually rotating around the sun, revolving around the sun. Imagine the next day that the sun comes up in the morning and you realize that it's not actually the sun rotating, it's the earth rotating 24-hour cycles that cause the sun to rise and set. Same exact scene, same exact everything. The only difference is what you now know about your perspective. And suddenly everything is much bigger and more wild and more cool. So, the reason why it's important to talk about the existence of God. If you don't believe in God's existence, the bottom line is, what it comes down to is, there is really no purpose. There's no point to anything. Everything is coincidental. We are basically just making up everything. And I'm not going to come at this saying that I know 100% that I'm right. That's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk about faith, and I'm going to talk about how we all really don't know. And so we live our lives based off a lot of things that we don't know. And dare I say, whether you believe in God or not, you're exercising a certain level of faith. But the reason why I compare this to the shift between Earth around the sun from sun around the Earth, I think it's similar. If you are going through existence and you think that everything is purposeless, that there's no point to anything, and then suddenly you realize that there is a higher being, a higher power that is in control of our fates and in control of everything, including your purpose and your reason for being here. Suddenly, a purposeless existence goes to one in which you have a very big purpose. And I think that that's a valuable thing worth discussing. Now, there's a couple things that often come up when the discussion of God is introduced. God's existence often gets mixed in with a lot of people who, if you are a Christian, you know how this goes. The first line of attack against God's existence is certain areas in the Bible in which the person does not agree that this could have happened according to science. So it's important because, and I think that those criticisms are valid, that those people are bringing up against the Bible, and they need to be addressed. That will happen later. But for the intro of this, I just want to say that you do not need to have any religious book, the Bible, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, any of them. None of them are necessary to be there in order to prove the existence of God. God's existence is going to be a question that remains even if none of these sacred books were ever invented or written. So it comes down to, there's two possibilities. Either God exists, either let's say this, a higher power exists, or a higher power does not exist. So in other words, we have our earth, our universe, everything in it, our reality has all come by way of a higher power existing or without a higher power. It's one or the other. And so a lot hinges on that in the way that you're going to view reality. So I can't go too much further because I'm already past my 5 minutes. But what I'm going to say is, to the person that believes in God and to the person that doesn't believe that God exists, so the atheist, we are at a spot right now, as advanced as we are in science, where we still cannot say with scientific observations or studies certain things. We can't determine certain things if they're true or not. One of them being the existence of God. So our science isn't capable of doing it. Does that mean that it's a waste of time? Does it mean that God can't exist since our science can't verify it? No, it doesn't. Our science also cannot verify whether or not the multiverse exists. And that's something that all scientists, for the most part, they're throwing that around as where our universe may be coming from. Black energy, or dark energy, dark matter, they can't be proven. There are elements that are observed in our known universe that make them speculate and assume and calculate that something has to be there, and they're calling it dark matter and dark energy, but it's never been seen and it's never been proven. So there are things that are beyond our science that could very well be true and are in some way. Something is true. So either God exists or he doesn't. And it's not an unscientific inquiry to try to find that out or to ask questions about it. So with that being said, in the unknowns, both the person who is a believer and the person who is not a believer are both operating off of a level of faith. If they're taking steps in their life to do things differently based off of what they believe is the ultimate reality of things. If you believe that your life is purposeless and there's no point to it, you're doing that. You could be doing that based off of your disbelief in God, that there's any purpose whatsoever. That's you taking a step into your actual life, making choices based off of a decision that you don't know is true. That would be a level of faith. You're walking in something. You're taking actions in something. The believer doesn't know for a fact, can't be proven by science, that God is true. But they believe it inside of them. They look at the reality around them and they say, how could it not be? Operating off of faith. The difference is the scientific community that doesn't believe in God, they say that you can't use faith because faith and science aren't compatible. Yes, they are. We all do it. There's nothing wrong with using science to validate your faith and to support it. But the difference between that community and the faith community or a religious community, they have no problem with having faith. That's what it's all about. So in that regard, if there's two things that you don't know are true, and the religious community is just saying, hey, I'm believing this by faith, at least they're admitting something that's happening in both camps. Anyways, I've gone over my time. It's an interesting conversation. I'll pick it up more tomorrow. All right. If you like this content, you can go to Darren Keim on YouTube. Like, subscribe, share. I will talk to you tomorrow.